Most people imagine intelligence as something loud. They picture the person who always has an answer, always speaks first, always corrects everyone in the room, and somehow turns every conversation into a performance. But real intelligence rarely behaves like that. Real intelligence observes before it reacts. It studies before it speaks. It notices patterns, understands consequences, and knows how much it still does not know. The strange reality is that the people who understand the least are often the most certain. The people with the weakest understanding usually carry the strongest confidence. This is not just annoying behavior. This is psychology. This is one of the oldest mental traps in human nature. The dangerous person is not the one who admits confusion. The dangerous person is the one who is absolutely convinced they are correct while being completely disconnected from reality. That person becomes resistant to growth, resistant to feedback, and resistant to truth itself. Overconfidence is one of the clearest indicators of limited self-awareness. A person who truly understands complexity develops humility because the deeper you study anything, the more layers appear. The more you learn about people, relationships, power, psychology, or success, the more you realize certainty is fragile. But people with shallow understanding experience something completely different. They see one layer and believe they have mastered the entire system. They learn one phrase and think they understand human behavior. They watch a few videos online and suddenly become experts in manipulation, trauma, intelligence, or leadership. Their confidence grows faster than their competence, and the human brain rewards this illusion because confidence feels powerful while doubt feels uncomfortable. Most people would rather protect their ego than confront reality. That is why overconfidence spreads so easily. You see it everywhere. The loudest person in the room often knows the least. The person interrupting constantly is usually compensating for insecurity. The person who cannot tolerate disagreement is often terrified of discovering they are wrong. True intelligence does not panic when challenged. Fragile intelligence does. A genuinely intelligent person can hear new information without emotional collapse. They can update their beliefs. They can admit mistakes. They can say, "I was wrong." And that sentence alone requires more intelligence than most people realize. Ego treats correction like humiliation, disagreement like attack, and uncertainty like weakness. So the mind builds armor, and that armor often looks like arrogance. The overconfident person builds an identity around appearing smart instead of becoming wise. They care more about winning conversations than understanding reality. They memorize phrases instead of developing insight. They perform intelligence instead of practicing it, and people fall for it constantly because confidence is persuasive. Human beings are wired to associate certainty with competence. If someone speaks boldly enough, many people assume they know what they are talking about. This is why charismatic fools can influence entire groups. It is why manipulative personalities often sound convincing. The brain mistakes certainty for authority, but certainty without understanding creates destruction. Some of the worst decisions in human history came from overconfident people who believed they were smarter than everyone around them. They ignored warnings, ignored evidence, and ignored consequences because their ego became stronger than their perception. One of the clearest psychological signs of limited intelligence is the inability to self-reflect. Self-reflection requires internal honesty. It requires a person to observe their flaws without collapsing emotionally. Most people cannot do this consistently. Instead, they create stories. When they fail, it is someone else's fault. When relationships collapse, the other person was crazy. When opportunities disappear, the world is unfair. Their ego continuously rewrites reality to protect identity. This is why many unintelligent people appear strangely confident even while their lives are falling apart. Awareness would force accountability, and accountability threatens ego, so they avoid it. Psychologically, this creates a cycle. Low awareness leads to inflated confidence. Inflated confidence blocks learning. Lack of learning creates repeated failure. Failure triggers defensiveness, and defensiveness destroys growth. Meanwhile, intelligent people often experience the opposite problem. They question themselves, they overanalyze, they consider multiple perspectives because they recognize uncertainty and complexity. Because of this, they sometimes appear less confident externally, even while possessing deeper understanding internally. The fool says, "I already know." The wise person says, "There is more to understand." That difference changes everything. One of the biggest misconceptions about intelligence is that it is connected to education, vocabulary, or status. It is not. Some highly educated people are emotionally unintelligent. Some successful people operate entirely from ego and impulse. Some people with impressive language skills are mentally rigid and psychologically fragile. Real intelligence reveals itself through behavior. Can someone regulate emotion under pressure? Can they tolerate disagreement without becoming hostile? Can they admit mistakes? Can they learn from criticism? Can they separate feelings from facts? These things matter far more than sounding smart. Many overconfident people are addicted to appearing superior because internally they feel inferior. Their arrogance is compensation. Their need to dominate conversations comes from insecurity, not wisdom. Watch insecure people carefully. They constantly need validation. They constantly need to be right. They interrupt, correct small details, dismiss others, and overreact to criticism because underneath all of it is fear. Fear of inadequacy, fear of exposure, fear of being ordinary. So they build identities around superiority. But superiority complexes are often camouflage for fragile self-worth. A secure, intelligent person does not need to constantly prove intelligence. They do not need to dominate every interaction. They are comfortable observing quietly because they are not performing for approval. Overconfident people hate silence because silence removes performance. Performance is how they maintain identity. In social groups, overconfident people often gain attention quickly because confidence attracts focus, but over time, reality exposes them. Their contradictions become visible. Their emotional immaturity becomes obvious. Their shallow understanding starts collapsing under pressure because reality always tests performance eventually, and performance cannot survive sustained pressure without substance. One reason people remain trapped in overconfidence is because modern culture rewards appearance over depth. Social media especially magnifies this problem. People are rewarded for sounding certain, not being accurate. Loud opinions spread faster than thoughtful nuance. The internet created millions of fake experts. People read one article and become psychologists, watch one documentary and become analysts, learn one manipulation term and suddenly diagnose everyone around them. The brain loves shortcuts because labels create the illusion of mastery, but memorizing terminology is not wisdom. True understanding changes behavior, and most people never reach that level because self-awareness is uncomfortable. There is a painful moment intelligent people eventually face. It is the moment they realize how much of human behavior is driven by ego, insecurity, fear, and unconscious patterns. After that realization, they stop being impressed by loud personalities because loudness is not strength, aggression is not confidence, and dominance is not intelligence. Some people are simply terrified of being insignificant, and their entire personality becomes an attempt to escape that fear. The tragedy is that overconfident people often sabotage their own potential. They stop learning because they believe they already know enough. They reject feedback. They isolate themselves from truth. Eventually, their growth freezes while life continues evolving around them. Meanwhile, humble people continue improving quietly. Humility is not weakness. Humility is accuracy. It is the recognition that reality is bigger than your current understanding. The smartest people in any field usually possess a certain calmness. They do not panic when corrected. They do not collapse emotionally when challenged because their identity is not dependent on appearing flawless. That emotional stability is a form of intelligence itself. Overconfidence often hides emotional immaturity. Emotionally immature people experience disagreement as disrespect. They personalize everything. They cannot separate criticism of an idea from criticism of identity, so they become reactive. Reactive people rarely think clearly because emotion hijacks perception. This is why some people become impossible to reason with. Their ego becomes fused with their opinions. Changing their mind feels like psychological death, so they defend false beliefs even when evidence becomes overwhelming. The human mind will protect identity before truth if self-awareness is weak enough, and that explains much of human conflict. You will notice something fascinating when you observe highly intelligent people closely. Many of them ask more questions than they answer. Curiosity replaces certainty. Exploration replaces performance. They listen carefully because they understand information hides everywhere. Overconfident people do the opposite. They speak constantly, assume constantly, and conclude constantly, because they already decided they are the smartest person in the room before the conversation even begins. That mindset blocks growth permanently because growth requires openness, and openness requires humility. Many people secretly fear intelligent individuals not because intelligence is threatening, but because intelligence exposes illusion. Truly perceptive people notice inconsistencies. They notice manipulation. They notice insecurity hidden behind performance. Overconfident people feel uncomfortable around deeply aware individuals because awareness sees through masks, and masks are exhausting to maintain. Some people spend their entire lives performing confidence while privately feeling lost. Their arrogance becomes armor against self-doubt. Their superiority becomes a defense mechanism against shame. This is why insulting them often triggers extreme reactions. You are not attacking their opinion. You are threatening the fragile structure holding their identity together. Strong minds do not shatter from disagreement. Fragile egos do. The irony is that intelligent people often appear less certain precisely because they understand complexity. They recognize that human behavior contains contradictions. They know situations are rarely black and white. They understand context matters. Simplistic thinkers crave simple answers because complexity overwhelms them, so they divide the world into heroes and villains, winners and losers, smart people and idiots. But reality is more nuanced. Even intelligent people can become foolish when ego takes control. Intelligence without self-awareness eventually turns destructive too. That is why emotional regulation matters so much. A person who cannot control emotion will eventually sabotage logic. One ego-driven decision can destroy years of progress. One of the most powerful psychological skills a person can develop is intellectual humility. Not fake humility or performative modesty, but real humility. The ability to say, I may be missing something, or I could be wrong. That mindset keeps perception flexible. Flexible minds adapt while rigid minds break. Many people confuse stubbornness with strength, but rigidity is often fear disguised as confidence. Truly strong individuals can adjust when reality changes. Think about nature itself. The rigid tree snaps during storms while flexible structures survive. Human psychology works similarly. People who cling desperately to identity become fragile under pressure, while people who remain adaptable continue evolving. Many people stay emotionally trapped for decades because they never question themselves deeply enough to transform. Their ego prevents introspection, so the same toxic patterns repeat endlessly. Different relationships, same chaos. Different environments, same problems. Different opportunities, same self-sabotage, because the real issue was internal all along. Overconfident people rarely examine internal patterns honestly. They stay focused outward, blaming, criticizing, correcting, and controlling anything except looking inward. But intelligence grows inward first. Awareness begins with observation of self. Noticing emotional triggers, insecurity, defensiveness, and ego reactions. Most people spend their lives studying others while remaining strangers to themselves. That is not intelligence. That is avoidance.